Hey, Mike, you ready to talk about Chesterton's fence?
I'm always one for big barriers, so yes. Oh,
Hi, Chesterton.
There exists in such a case a certain institution or law. Let us say, for the sake of simplicity, a fence or gate. Fence or gate is erected across the road.
Dude,
recognize it?
you put in the first paragraph, didn't you?
It's the full paragraph, yeah. Word for word.
Don't see the use of this. Let us clear it away. Clear it away. Clear it away. Clear it all away.
Nice. I like it.
Good way to memorize.
To which the more intelligent type of reformer.
Yes, so we are going to be talking about Chesterton's fence today.
If you don't see
Probably the most famous of his images. People know about him. Or
You're listening to another episode of Chesterton's Gateway with Ethan, Nicolle and Michael Grumbine, and me, AI Chesterton. You may have heard of my face.
Right, we have heard of your fence. Well, you can stop talking now. Very catchy. It's like bad religion, meets
how long
good
did it
religion.
take for the whole paragraph? I didn't even look.
Here's this part here. I just talk this part. Oh no, it's not. I gotta do solo or something. I got like the first.
This paradox rests on the most
Okay.
elementary common sense. The gate or fence did not grow there. It was not set up by somnambulists who built it in their sleep. It is highly improbable that it was put there by escaped lunatics who were for some reason loose in the street. Some
Yep.
person had some reason for thinking it would be a good thing
It
for
works.
somebody. And until we know what the reason was, we really cannot judge.
All right,
whether
well,
the reason
we're
was
doing. We're
reasonable.
diving into Chesterton's fence today, and this is the whole reason I put this chapter in my book. By the way, you're listening to Chesterton's Gateway, a podcast named after the book that I made called Chesterton's Gateway. It's a gateway drug to Chesterton. A bunch of and a bunch of essays with ideas in them that I think are accessible to everybody. And this one I picked. It was kind of random because I read this book. It's called The Thing: Why I Am a Catholic. But this idea. Oh wow, is that a first edition?
Yes, sir.
Wow, impressive. Is one of his probably his most famous illustration comes from is Chesterton's fence. So that's the main reason I put it in. It's got a lot of similarities to his chapter about the family that we did, but there's also a lot of differences. It's a long one. This will be our first 3-parter.
So you'll see us in the same clothing for 3 episodes in a
3
row.
straight episodes. Well, we didn't today. We're going to record them back to back.
We do, in fact, have different clothes. So
If we make it to, we'll see if we can do 3 at once here. So, Chesterton will explain what we're reading here.
The drift from domesticity from my book, The Thing, Why I Am a Catholic, published in 1929. That's right, I converted to Catholicism after seeing a John Carpenter sci-fi horror movie starring Kurt Russell.
The Thing: Why I'm a Catholic.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
I like that movie, by the way.
that's a great one.
Yeah,
You know who didn't like our friend Mason? We watched that as one of our Chesterton group movie nights, and he was not impressed.
Oh, really? I wasn't
He's
there for that movie.
he's such a cinephile. I was like, man, it's some of the best practical effects ever. All right, well, speaking of being practical, is there anything else I should say to set this up? For those that are new, this is AI Chesterton, but we used a sample of his real voice, so this is as legit as it gets. This is Chesterton reading to us, so here we go.
In the matter of reforming things, as distinct from deforming them, there is one plain and simple principle, a principle which will probably be called a paradox. There exists in such a case a certain institution or law. Let us say, for the sake of simplicity, a fence or gate erected across a road. The more modern type of reformer goes gaily up to it and says, I don't see the use of this, let us clear it away. To which the more intelligent type of reformer will do well to answer, if you don't see the use of it, I certainly won't let you clear it away. Go away and think. Then when you can come back and tell me that you do see the use of it, I may allow you to destroy it.
There you go. The defensive tradition.
There it is, Chesterton's fence. The thing I find probably most fascinating about this is and it's a theme that's going to happen throughout this reading, throughout this chapter of the book, is this principle is Chesterton's appeal to mankind when we look at things, to recognize that there were other people in the world. It's essentially an attempt to say, look, you're not God here. You're not the only one that can think and solve things and erect things and destroy things. Mm-hmm. And he isn't saying, I forbid you to. He's saying, go and think about it. Go and put yourself, find out why the thing exists first. Do this eminently reasonable human activity, which we're so poor at doing, apparently. So
yeah. Like, do we know what would happen if we killed all the mosquitoes? Would that have a negative effect in some way that we don't know about?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know the answer, but maybe we should find out, right, before we kill them all.
We should probably find out what the knock-on effects are. Yeah.
Or like bees or something. I can't remember. There's some issue. Yeah, I mean, bees are important for pollination, right? So
yeah, and I like mosquitoes better because mosquitoes we view as a nuisance, just like
I despise them.
In Chesterton's example views it as a
nuisance. That's how they view traditions. Yeah, I'm curious because as a Catholic, do you have, and with 9 kids, I'm sure you've run into, because Catholics have a lot of various traditions, little things we do this time of day, we do, or not like that, but like even like, say you have family prayer time or reading the Bible time or whatever. You ever get the kids questioning these traditions? You find yourself having to defend yourself?
Absolutely. And it's one of those things like, you'll hear a lot of people talk about how, kids question things, or sometimes you'll hear adults say, I went to Catholic school when I was raised, and I followed the rules, but then, I left it when I was out. Yeah. And the thing that I find fascinating as a parent is, let me put it from a positive perspective. I actually enjoy explaining the reasons behind traditions and why things exist the way they do. And I'm not presuming that the person's going to agree with me. I'm not presuming that the tradition is always right and needs to be followed all the time in every way. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it ought to be set aside momentarily or sometimes permanently. But it is worthy of talking about why things are the way they are. And a lot of parents, it just doesn't apparently. Sorry, that was an unintended pun there. Mm-hmm. Apparently, it doesn't occur to them, or they don't like. I mean, probably because a lot of times they themselves haven't thought about the reasons for traditions, and so
I think a lot of people don't think about that. It is the childish way and the easiest, simplest way, just to go, oh, it's annoying, knock it down, get it out of the way.
Right.
And that's why the argument, I think, for traditional marriage, most people just kind of go, well, what's the big deal? Like, I think the question of like knocking that down and changing the entire definition of what marriage is, it's a huge decision. It's a huge choice. Not many people count the cost of that kind of thing.
And I think one of the interesting things is that, because what he's going to do here in this whole chapter is he's going to examine, as you pointed out, marriage and family. Mm-hmm. And unlike offense, we often don't see those things as institutions, as things instituted by people. We see that as just sort of a natural state, or it's just the way it is, and everybody has one. We don't think about it. A fence, at least, you can see, okay, somebody made the fence. So Chesterton's, it's more obvious to us that when you come across a fence that there might be a reason behind it. I saw this, I was trying to remember what the movie was. There's like this horror sci-fi movie where there are people, their group of I think it was young teenagers or something. But anyway, they come across a fence in the middle of a forest, and there's all sorts of ominous clues that they shouldn't cross the barrier, but they're just sort of, yeah, whatever. We'll just why is this here? And then they cross, and then bad things ensue. But the fence has a reason, and we kind of recognize that it's an instituted thing. It was built by somebody. Oftentimes people don't see marriage and family as that kind of thing. And Chesterton's going to rise to the defense of family in that regard.
All right, well, let's keep going. This next one's a big paragraph, so I'm breaking it in half.
All right.
This paradox rests on the most elementary common sense. The gate or fence did not grow there. It was not set up by somnambulists who built it in their sleep. It is highly improbable that it was put there by escaped lunatics who were, for some reason, loose in the street. Some person had some reason for thinking it would be a good thing for somebody. And until we know what the reason was, we really cannot judge whether the reason was reasonable. It is extremely probable that we have overlooked some whole aspect of the question if something set up by human beings like ourselves seems to be entirely meaningless and mysterious. There are reformers who get over this difficulty by assuming that all their fathers were fools. But if that be so, we can only say that folly appears to be a hereditary disease. But the truth is that nobody has any business to destroy a social institution until he has really seen it as an historical institution. If he knows how it arose and what purposes it was supposed to serve, he may really be able to say that they were bad purposes, or that they have since become bad purposes, or that they are purposes which are no longer served. But if he simply stares at the thing as a senseless monstrosity that has somehow sprung up in his path, it is he, and not the traditionalist, who is suffering from an illusion. We might even say that he is seeing things in a nightmare.
Now, what do you mean by that? The nightmare line right there. We might say he's seeing things in a nightmare.
Okay, so
I was tracking.
The thing, okay, so he's talking about the reformers of his time their idea was reform the family. You have to remember that he's writing this in the late 1920s. So the biggest movement to destroy and replace the modern family since Sparta was underway, which was communism. So communism presumed that the state would do a better job of raising everyone's kids than families had. The families were this institution that was, became a tool of the bourgeoisie and, was really a part of the way men were oppressed. So the way to remove that is to have the state, raise your kids and put them in charge of everything. So these are the kinds of reformers he's talking about. And he's actually seen it in they're hearing about it in real time from Russia at this stage when he's writing this book. So he does, in this paragraph, he first does the joke of, and this is, I really love the line. There are reformers who get over this difficulty by assuming that all their fathers were fools. But if that be so, we can only say the folly appears to be a hereditary disease. In other words, they're the fools. And this attitude I encounter quite a bit about people that look back in history, where they presume that the people of the Middle Ages, for example, which is my area of history, most accurate, most completely, is they were all idiots. Everyone knows the people from the Middle Ages were all dumb, and they did stupid things, and they believed stupid things, and they built stupid things, except the cathedrals, which we keep visiting for some reason. But so he's saying you first have to see this social institution of the family as an historic institution. But if you simply look at it as a senseless monstrosity that has somehow sprung up, it says you're suffering from an illusion, and you're seeing things in a nightmare. In other words, in a nightmare, normal things get distorted into monstrosities. So Chesterton's saying the normal thing of the family in the mind of the family reformer, either the communist or some enlightened socialist trying to replace the family, what they are seeing is a nightmare. They're not seeing reality. Just like you're seeing normal things distorted into nightmarish things, like in our sleep happens sometimes.
Right. All right, let's continue. Let's finish this paragraph.
This principle applies to 1,000 things, to trifles as well as true institutions, to convention as well as to conviction. It was exactly the sort of person like Joan of Arc, who did know why women wore skirts, who was most justified in not wearing one. It was exactly the sort of person like St. Francis, who did sympathize with the feast and the fireside, who was most entitled to become a beggar on the open road. And when, In the general emancipation of modern society, the Duchess says she does not see why she shouldn't play leapfrog, or the Dean declares that he sees no valid canonical reason why he should not stand on his head. We may say to these persons, with patient benevolence, defer therefore the operation you contemplate until you have realized by ripe reflection what principle or prejudice you are violating. Then play leapfrog and stand on your head, and the Lord be with you.
Great delivery.
That was pretty good. Sometimes AI Chesterton does a good job, and sometimes he, the previous paragraph, he had some inexplicable slowdowns, or the
Yeah. When they're really bad, I try to before we do this, I go through it. If he messes them up really bad, I redo it. I have him do new takes.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting because if you listen to the original audio this is from, he speaks very slow most of the whole thing. It's unbearable, and his accent's so thick. And so I actually speed it up, and I put I've changed some settings on it so it's more digestible. The funny thing is, though, there's another video of him speaking to a live audience, and it sounds really way more similar to this.
Interesting.
Like he changed his voice in the way that I've changed it. Anyway, I like to keep this, these standalones. So I know we talked about Joan of Arc before, but just a quick recap on Joan of Arc and St. Francis for anybody who doesn't know.
Okay. Yeah, so St. Joan of Arc, what he's saying there, she was, famously a French saint from the Middle Ages, 15th century. So she's in the 1400s, and she became a woman who became a warrior and led the people of France against the English. And, in the Middle Ages, it was, of course, highly unusual for a woman to wear armor. And what Chesterton's point is that she understood the purpose of skirts, in other words, of women's clothing, and she understanding the purpose was exactly the kind of person who was entitled to not wear one, who could justify not wearing one because she knew she had a job to do, which required armor, not a skirt. And St. Francis of Assisi is, of course, was born in the 12th century, but he's 12th and 13th century saint, founder of the Franciscan monks, one of the largest monastic orders in Catholicism. And he was born to a noble family, and then he was a soldier, actually, and then he gave it all away, and his order of Franciscans eschewed property at first, anyway, and in his lifetime, they basically lived on the road, traveling from town to town, living off of whatever people were willing to give them to eat and where to stay. So in other words, became a beggar on the open road is what the way Chesterton puts it. So he understood what the purpose of home and food was, and he knew he had a different purpose, and so he left that convention aside. And so he's saying, I love this paragraph because he's not telling the Duchess or at the end of the paragraph or the Dean to not be silly. He says, first, to understand what you're doing. Now, later on, we're going to return to the Duchess and the Dean in this reading, and he's going to say more about that. But he really Chesterton wants us to contemplate the reason behind things, but not be bound to it. If we can see why there's a good reason to leave it aside, then leave it aside. But know the principle that you're violating when you violate a principle. Understand it. And play leapfrog and stand on your head, and the Lord be with you. It's just,
the Lord be with you.
That's a great way to end.
All right, well, this next paragraph will be him kind of saying, this is my analogy exactly. The fence I'm talking about here is the family. So here we go.
Among the traditions that are being thus attacked, not intelligently but most unintelligently, is the fundamental human creation called the household or the home. That is a typical thing which men attack, not because they can see through it, but because they cannot see it at all. They beat at it blindly, in a fashion entirely haphazard and opportunist, and many of them would pull it down without even pausing to ask why it was ever put up. It is true that only a few of them would have avowed this object in so many words. That only proves how very blind and blundering they are. but they have fallen into a habit of mere drift and gradual detachment from family life, something that is often merely accidental and devoid of any definite theory at all. But though it is accidental, it is nonetheless anarchical. And it is all the more anarchical for not being anarchist. It seems to be largely founded on individual irritation, an irritation which varies with the individual.
I added a break there because it's a long paragraph. I can keep going or we can comment.
Quick comment. I'll just say that what he's saying here is people that attack the family, the institution of the household or home, most of them don't do it by saying, let's now attack the family. They just sort of attack the family by blundering into it and undermining things about the family because they don't see the family like we see the fence. They don't see it as an actual institution that was, quote unquote, put up, in Chesterton's words. Right. And I like his statement about anarchist. Chesterton is saying, look, if you're going to be an anarchist and destroy things or blow them up, you're doing it on purpose. But this anarchical thing of taking down the family is happening even without the deliberation that anarchists put into their work. It's just sort of happening because of irritation, which varies from individual to individual.
I know that, I'm trying to give examples of where they indirectly are attacking the family, like trying to get women into the workforce would be like a thing that their focus is doing that, but they're not saying like, oh, we love family probably, but they're also, their goal is to, women should get out a little bit or whatever.
Right, exactly. Or, they're irritated by the fact that, women who are, whose husbands die or they are divorced, he's actually going to claim divorce is another one of those irritations later on that actually undermines the family. But, I think of the modern day idea of a CPS, what they will say, Child Protective Services, is like, we're going to go into homes and look for when children are being abused, because everyone agrees it's a bad thing when a kid gets abused. So in order to do that, and especially because they're a bureaucracy, they first have to start with the premise they have the right to go in and basically put families on trial for suspected actions that are and act in a way which totally disrupts and destroys families sometimes. And I'm speaking from personal experience in my family growing up and extended family, where there were things that there's normal family behaviors and interactions, but they've decided that this is in the interest of protecting children from abuse, which is, by the way, everyone agrees, including myself. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing. You should definitely, if a child's being abused by their parents in a gross negligence or active way, they should be removed. But they use it as a way to sort of stumble, as Chesterton might say, into this undermining of the family through a variety of institutions. So.
Okay, this is the second of a paragraph, and also the last paragraph we'll be covering in this episode.
We are merely told that in this or that case, a particular temperament was tormented by a particular environment, but nobody even explained how the evil arose, let alone whether the evil is really escaped. We are told that in this or that family, Grandmama talked a great deal of nonsense, which God knows is true, or that it is very difficult to have intimate intellectual relations with Uncle Gregory without telling him he is a fool, which is indeed the case. But nobody seriously considers the remedy or even the malady, or whether the existing individualistic dissolution is a remedy at all. Much of this business began with the influence of Ibsen, a very powerful dramatist and an exceedingly feeble philosopher. I suppose that Nora of the Doll's House was intended to be an inconsequent person, but certainly her most inconsequent action was her last. She complained that she was not yet fit to look after children, and then proceeded to get as far as possible from the children that she might study them more closely.
Right, there you go. Hopefully you did your homework on that one, because I remember I looked up the Doll's House.
Right.
Ibsen, the playwright. I know Ibsen's a playwright. I've caught onto that because Chesterton mentions Ibsen quite a bit.
Yeah, and he had died when Chesterton was just getting his career started. He died in early 1900s, and so he's this Norwegian playwright. He wrote a bunch of plays. And I liked your comment in your book about it, which is true. That Chesterton admires him for his plays, but does not admire his his philosophy.
The actual point he's making.
Some of the points that are underlying what he's doing, and he's part of this larger. He influenced actually a good friend of Chesterton's, which is George Bernard Shaw, a good friend with whom Chesterton disagreed on almost every single issue, and would in fact publicly debate him, as well as be his friend. A peculiar Chesterton power that almost none of us have, and so he's part of this whole James Joyce, Oscar Wilde movement of plays and playwrights that sort of undermine normal societal norms and cultural norms, and try to not just entertain through their plays, but try to kind of take down modern social institutions, or at least erode them with new ideas. And so you have this main character in The Doll's House, Nora, and she leaves, and she holds herself to be unfit to look after children. She decides the way she's going to do it, because she can't possibly care for children, is to leave children behind and study them in other people's families, but not by interacting with them. And Chesterton's point is, look, that's an idiotic way of trying to understand a subject, is by getting far away. If you actually want to do scientific thinking, if you actually want to test, you have an hypothesis when it comes to a particular principle about raising children, for example, then you should get close to children. You should interact with them. You should understand them by closeness, not by leaving them behind, as Nora does in The Doll's House. Doll's House got a lot of bad attention for its proto-feminist principles. In this particular case, this is not quite proto-feminism. He's just talking about how this character intends to learn more about a subject by removing herself from a subject, which seems like a foolish way to learn about something.
So is that like the premise of the story, or is that kind of how it concludes, like the happy ending? It's like, oh, she found a way to interact with children. She stands at a distance and studies them.
Right. Well, she finds happiness that way. That's her. That's by separating herself from the family, her own kids.
Oh, her own kids. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. What? Okay, that makes it way worse.
Yeah, it's not a. It's a.
Is she abandoned or what the? Okay.
Yeah. I haven't. To be fair, I have not read the play myself. I've read summaries of it, and I've read a couple articles about people commenting about it. So before our internet community comes at me with this, I think it'll be worth reading. But yeah, apparently that's some homework. As she kind of leaves her family behind. So
good for her.
We should finish on that.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let's. Well, we're going to continue on with the drifts from domesticity next week. So you know what it's all about.
I certainly won't let you clear it away. Love it.
And you can check out our Spotify, Chesterton's Gateway, the band, not the podcast, if you want all these songs. And join us on Patreon.
Yeah.
Get early episodes, exclusive content. You can be part of a community of other Chesterton nerds. You can send us a link. We have a whole document you can be part of. Anyway, we're going to repeat the song as Chesterton closes out here. Here we go. Here we know.
Chesterton's Gateway is produced by Ethan Nicolle and Michael Grumbine. It is based on the book of the same name, which can be found on that capitalist monstrosity Amazon.com. Send questions and comments to chestertonsgateway@gmail.com and join us on Patreon, where only the true Chestertonians can be found. Goodbye.
All right. See you guys next time. We'll continue part 2.